All right. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. We are going through Beyond Order by Jordan Peterson. Today we are doing rule number 10. The format is as follows. First, everybody gets to talk about what they got from this rule. Victor has a presentation somewhere in the middle of all of that. So if you have read this rule, you're invited to share what you got from it. Okay, focus on the biggest things that you got, maximum of about 3 minutes or so. After that, we are going to go into breakout rooms, and we have some questions that we'll be going through. The breakout rooms will last 20 minutes. They will be moderated, and we'll go through a bunch of questions. Everybody gets to answer the questions and discuss them. And when you come back with the biggest question you have on this general topic of relationships. And we will collect all the questions, and then we're going to do a lightning round where anybody who wants gets to answer any question that came up. All right, so that's the format. So let's get started. First, what did you get from this chapter? Go ahead and type ! If you would like to share. Rules are as follows. Type ! in chat or raise your hand in Zoom in order to speak. Rule number 2, keep on topic. Rule number 3, be brief. Rule number 4, speak your mind. Feel free to disagree with anybody on anything and do so courteously. All right, who would like to go first? Joe.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to be very high level with my observations for this particular rule, because there's a lot to take away, but I think there's some key points. I think this is a very analytical approach to maintaining a relationship, but I think a really key point is that he really stresses the importance of knowing yourself and knowing what you want out of a relationship in order to actually be able to enter in a relationship. So the importance of self-awareness was one aspect of that. The other is the idea of trust and the importance of trust, and that it is a risk that if you do trust someone, that trust can be violated and you could be crushed by that. But the reward would be that you have somebody for the rest of your life to go through your trials and tribulations that actually you can rely on for advice in the most difficult of circumstances. So I think that he also really captures the idea of sacrifice, the importance of sacrifice in a relationship, and how that actually really does make it work. And I do know a lot of successful relationships, a lot of my friends that have had successful relationships, and they have been able to figure out how to sacrifice for one another, but they view the sacrifice as a gift in and of itself. So they know that there's something that is being returned. They see that the idea of giving themselves as part of the reward, and in addition to some of the other benefits that you get. So one example that we talked about briefly with Pegor, and I'm going to steal it, is the idea of when you're trying to figure out who would do the dishes or make the bed or do things like that, you start to come to a common agreement about things. And you maximize the time that you would have for each other to date and to do other things when you figure out how to manage your life in other ways. The obvious one that I think is another important point that I think is fairly obvious to every relationship, but is especially obvious and are important to a romantic relationship, is the effective communication. And having similar value systems where you're actually starting to value the same things and that you're actually communicating clearly with one another. The last one is that the relationship has to be a non-zero sum game where it can't be one where one party dominates the other. It's really can't the idea of where one person is the tyrant. It would be it's unlikely to be a successful relationship, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that that's a very good insight, because a lot of people, I know some unsuccessful relationships, people go in with the relationship thinking, what are they going to get out of it, not what are they going to give. And those relationships tend to struggle a little bit more. There seems to have to be a point of discovery where they look at they see themselves as being on equal footing. Those are general takeaways. I mean, I thought the economy aspect of it, even whose career you're going to prioritize, some of these very practical steps. There's a lot of practical wisdom that is in the chapter as far as, you know, how you could set up your life. But I still see this more in line with order than chaos, the chapter overall. So those are just some of my comments.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. So folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to share what you got from this chapter. Maritza, followed by Becky. Maritza.
So this chapter I had to read a second time. Most of the chapters I want to read a second time. This one I had to, because I needed to find a little bit of separation from the emotions that this one invoked in me, and to see the value or to see the bigger message that was trying to be said here. And, you know, I found myself ultimately thinking of a couple sayings from some elders in my life or in my history. So my mom, she's been gone a very long time, but I remember her saying, and it's a rough translation from Spanish, in any situation where two people always agree, one of them is not necessary. And that's kind of what I ultimately decided I was hearing here from Peterson, that he's saying this need for negotiation, for conversation, is so vital to the health of a relationship that it cannot, must not be ignored or done haphazardly. Like, we require intentional conversations and negotiations for any relationship to succeed. Peterson focuses on the romantic relationship, but I would argue that some of these more general statements he's making can be applied and are as important for any relationship. I have, you know, my one of my very best friends, we met in college when we were like 17 or so, you know, so when our relationship turned 21, we threw a party for it. We have had times in our lives where every time we spoke, we were so angry at each other. And, you know, this is another female. This has never been a romantic relationship. This is a friend. But the love between us is so strong that we have the ability to, I guess, hurt each other as deeply, almost as if it were a romantic relationship. And it's, you know, but I was lashing out at a time in my life at everyone, not even mindfully. I was just in an emotional state where I just couldn't deal. And because I had spent so much of my time and my life keeping a very strong control over my emotions, when I didn't have that control, they just kind of were going everywhere. And she had the misfortune of being close enough that she was getting all the shrapnel. And I'll never forget, she called me one day and she said, I am not letting you go. So if you need to call me every day and yell at me, you keep doing that. And that's what I'm choosing to share with you instead about this chapter. I have so many other negative things I could about this chapter, but really, I think the broader message, the more important message is that if a relationship is going to mean anything, you have to decide that there is no escape door. You have to, in your mind, choose to stay. The same friend's grandmother, she lived to be 92. And at my girlfriend's wedding, she told her, the thing about a marriage is that you have to wake up every day, look at yourself in a mirror, and decide to stay married that day before you brush your teeth. And then whatever comes, whatever happens, you've already made that decision. And I think that's what Peterson is saying here, that, and I will say to you, this is true for any relationship. This is not just, I mean, if you want a successful romantic relationship, yes, definitely. But also for a relationship in general, we are not meant to be solitary creatures. We require relationships of substance. If we believe that we can just throw away our relationships, they lose a little bit of value. I'm stealing this from Joe. Joe talked about, the friendships of virtue, the concept of that's presented to us by Aristotle, and this is what I'm hoping people will remember of this chapter, not some of the other undertones, just the fact that we're not meant to be alone. We need relationships, and we need to choose, in his first book, he does remind us that we should choose our friends with care. And another Spanish colloquialism I'm gonna switch to English for you is, tell me with whom you walk, and I'll tell you who you are. So your friends of substance are shaping and defining who you are. Aren't those friends then worth grabbing onto with two hands and just doing whatever it takes to make sure you can keep them? I think the answer has to be yes here. There's no other way around it. And that's, in his own way, with his own perspectives, that's what I really hear Peterson saying to us, that, we need to, so long as we believe that there is an out, we're not all in. And there are studies that do show that in relationships, this marriage ceremony, the law of marriage, it changes something within us. And it creates this concept of no escape door. So that's what I'm hearing here. And that's just it. I'm gonna leave it with that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Maritza. That was great. Just lots of interesting points. Next up is Becky, followed by Kara. Folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark to line up to talk about what you're getting from this chapter. Go ahead, Becky.
So I agree with what Joe said, the importance of having the same values, because with values, it's harder to align on that later on in the relationship. So it's important to have that upfront versus methods of communication or interactions and all that can be learned and adjusted, but core values are things that do not typically change. And with the balance of tyranny and slavery, that's important too. And why Peterson says negotiation is necessary is because this is really very much an equal partnership, and you're constantly balancing back and forth between staying in the midline. And so having too much of one really tips it of away from the equality of partnership, to the point where it's like, I think very much we're on a spectrum of intimacy and withdrawal. So when that state of one partner being the tyrant and the other one being like under in the state of slavery for too long, it becomes this habit where it's so hard to break. And then the person who eventually moves into this habit of withdrawal, which is like stonewalling. And it's harder to recover from that state of apathy than it is to recover from hatred. And so rekindling love from apathy, it's pretty much not, requires so much more. So that's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is going to be, let's see here. It's going to be Kara, Brian, Sunny, and Jade. Kara.
Yeah, this chapter explains very, very well why I'm divorced now. So everything of what not to do, it happened in my marriage. So a chapter about the negotiation, the tyranny and the slaveries was very like triggering to me, because you cannot have negotiation when the vulnerability it's used against you. So you are open, you express your needs and wants, and they end up used against you, or you end up having withdrawn from giving all these wants and needs to you. And it's very tricky, because you want to be partnership, you want to be negotiation, but at the same time you want to be open, to be vulnerable, to express everything that you wish and want from the relationship. And then eventually, unfortunately, this can come against you, and the negotiation powers are not equal anymore. It was a very good analysis of my relationship that ended like a year and a half ago, in terms of the necessity to have all parts present, the economy part, to make sure you share fairly day by day life, the romantic part, it's necessary, the negotiation part is necessary. And what is also very necessary, it's what he said at the very beginning about the dating part. I wish people will take classes, courses, mandatory readings before going into a serious relationship, because sometimes I feel like we just go there and we know nothing, and we kind of discover on the go, and in the process we get hurt, or we hurt somebody else. And an observation he made about the fact that we study so much, we educate ourselves so much for a career, but there is nothing out there to make sure we are good, educated, knowledgeable, how to enter and sustain a relationship. And I think all the points in the chapter 10, they must be all present in order to have a stable, sane, healthy relationship. And if you miss one, then I believe that no matter how hard you work on the other ones, eventually it will be hard to have peace, to have a good, stable relationship. So it was a very, very good chapter. I wished I had it available long time ago, at least to understand where I stand and decide to leave, instead of staying into imbalanced, toxic, negative kind of environment. And the author says, if it's like that, of course you need to leave for your own safety and for your own sanity. And I regret I didn't have this resource some time ago for me to wake up and understand that if one piece is missing, then it's time to go. It's time to finish and just find your piece somewhere else or somehow else. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kara. Really, that was fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Really appreciate that. Next up, it's going to be useful to many people. Next up is Brian, Sunny, Jade, and Kevin. Brian. Brian, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, here we are. It's Penny who's going to talk.
Yes.
I just wanted to talk generally. I mean, the chapter is entitled Maintaining the Romance in Your Relationship or Your Marriage, but I think that the whole chapter is more just on, you've got to have a relationship. And the key is the relationship. And yes, romance is important, but you can't have romance basically without a relationship. And then the importance of establishing the relationship. I thought it was interesting when he was talking about when people do like make marriage vows and stuff like that, that what they really are is kind of committing themselves to a more ideal situation. And, that they will be better people, that the marriage will be kind of an ideal situation, and then striving to find that throughout their time together, working toward that as a goal rather, than some individual goal that people would have. I was, when he said slavery, tyranny, and negotiation, I had never thought about it. I mean, I thought a lot about compromise in marriage, but I never had labeled it exactly that way. So I was kind of, but I can see, where definitely there is, that aspect and in different parts of your relationship and at different times, the relationship changes and the way people deal with it change. But I thought it was good. I mean, just thinking about, Brian and I, like the dating aspect, because we don't go on things that we call dates per se, but we go out, except pre-COVID, we go out all the time because we like to go to the arts and museums and walks and to eat out in restaurants and stuff. And we're always going out and spending time with each other, doing things that we like. So I just thought that was interesting that seemed to be a good basis for a relationship, is to have that. That's all I had to say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Penny. Next up is going to be Sunny, Jade, Kevin, and Jean. Sunny.
Okay, good evening. Well, I'd like to start by saying that if Melinda and Bill knew what they were getting into, they would think twice. Divorce to me is very difficult. I would say that it's important to know that there's 3 stories. He talked about your story, my story, and our story. And I think that's very important. You've got to put the time in. I think if we looked at relationship like a job, we'd probably do better. We wouldn't call in sick. We would devote ourselves more to our everyday tasks. Recently, a friend of mine, she's wealthy, and she's complaining about the work she has to do. And I said, well, why don't you just hire someone? And I think that in a lot of marriages, if people just hired somebody to just do the work they don't want to do, then there would be a lot less divorce. So in the chapter, I would say, he talks about don't forsake the rare and precious without due cause. So, to examine what your due cause is before you just, think that the grass is greener somewhere else. He talks about time management, being creative, keeping it fresh, doing your role well. So all in all, I agree that you have to put your best into relationship. It's not just going to naturally be harmony. And don't look at the speck in your partner's eye. You know, take care of the log in your own eye first.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Next up is going to be Jade, Kevin, and Jean. Jade.
I kind of put hand up by accident, but I do kind of have a comment.
You always have a comment,
So
go
I will
ahead.
share that. Sorry. Well, I think it's interesting. Again, I feel like Jordan Peterson is writing to a very specific audience, but I don't think that means nothing in there makes sense. A lot makes sense, but it's just not a broad, comprehensive view of things and the subject. Like, I think it's interesting about like how much of relationships and relation standards and dynamics are based on cultural expectations that are either ingrained in us, learned, observed, like everything from the age to who's the leadership, who's following, submission, responsibilities, roles, all of that stuff is kind of on some level taught and traditional in almost most cultures. Now it's very strange because those things are becoming less clear as what each member of a relationship's role is. Like for instance, and I know it gets even more confusing when you have a conversation, you naturally will assume like a heterosexual relationship, but like regardless, you just see more men walking around wearing baby carriers. That wouldn't have happened 40, 50 years ago. That wouldn't have been happening. So it's like, it's interesting the things that he's saying, because like I feel like there's so many things involved in deciding the dynamics of the relationship. I think a large part of it is how dependent you are on setting your life according to your cultural standards versus how much of you and your partner are dependent on what works for you guys specifically. And then I think it's also interesting that we're living at a time where pain seems to be highly pathologized, and relationships tend to come, like how Maritza was explaining, like there can be some really, really difficult times in a relationship. These are, again, things that once upon a time, 50, 60 years ago, would not have warranted divorce. But nowadays, done. So it's very interesting how the concept of loyalty has also changed within the dynamic of a relationship. And the last thing I'll say is that my current favorite song, which is kind of funny right now, you'd have to listen to the song. Don't judge me. It's called Toxic Love. It's by Patrice Roberts. And basically the couple is kind of always breaking up and getting back together. That's the premise of the song. But it's also, they're kind of like, because we're human, like you'd have to listen to the song. And again, it's like that concept of being able to contextualize and like know maybe people who have been like this, and like, but it wasn't kind of like that detrimental type of thing. And so, and again, concept of toxicity, like there seems to be less grace. Like honey will, I don't know if the saying still on the honey bottles, but it used to tell you not to give honey to an infant. Honey is a great thing, but it's toxic to an infant. So the concept of toxicity toxicity is very subjective. It's very dependent. It's just like, if you have celiac, it's awful, but if you don't, then hey, it's not a thing. So like it's really dependent. So I hear what everyone's saying, and I hear a lot of points. I hear what Jordan Peterson is saying. There's a lot of points, but I feel like this is such a broad topic. It's so hard to fit into a chapter.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jade. Excellent. Thank you. So we are going to go with now Peter's presentation, followed by Kevin and Jean. If anybody else wants to share what they got from the chapter, go ahead and type exclamation mark. Peter, you're on.
All right. So, well, thanks so much, Shrikant. And so this chapter actually reminds me, or it makes me think of his life as a psychologist, and all the things that he has seen in his experience. So it shows a lot. And tonight we are discussing rule number 10, and it's plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationship. And while discussing this chapter, Peterson mentions a particular thing about wedding. So let's just recall what he says over here. So he recounts a particular ritual he witnessed in one of his friend's wedding. As the couple were at least nominally Christian, they were married in a ceremony reflecting Christian traditions. So during the exchange, there are vows, and at the same time, there is a candle lighting ritual. And he talks about it. And Peterson says he spent a lot of time thinking about this particular ritual. And he goes in to say the story of creation. So there's this ancient story where Eve, so from this story taken from Bible, Eve was taken out of Adam's rib, a woman from a man. This presents something of a mystery because it's a reversal of what naturally happens, where the life form comes out of females. It also gives rise to, according to Peterson, a line of methodological speculation, attempting the strangeness of this creative act predicated on a presupposition that Adam, the original man, produced by God, was a hermaphroditic, half masculine, half feminine, and only later separated into two sexes. This implies not only that the partition of the divinely produced unity, but the incompleteness of each sex themselves. A man and a woman, they are incomplete. In fact, the candle that they hold jointly indicates the binding power of two people coming together. And about the light itself, there's a lot of significance attached to light in the West and in the East. So in the West, we can see it in the form of lighting a Christmas tree, and so that we can see that. And something similar we can see in the East. We can see the significance of light in Hindu culture, where there is a festival that we celebrate. It's called Festival of Light, and it's called Diwali. And the story behind it also has a lot of significance to the idea of triumph of good over evil. And even Chinese, they have a lot of significance to the idea of light, and they'll celebrate a festival of light in the second month of English calendar. It's February. So there's a lot of significance attached to it. Also, coming back to the vows themselves, what's the cardinal principle here? See, when two people come together, it's very difficult for them to run their life together and speak truth and repair themselves in the light asked by this joint existence. It is for this reason they both swear the vows, the permanent vows, and they claim, I am bound to you. And the one party says that, and the other party says, yeah, I bound to you too. And if it in a way, it is very strange, because two personalities coming together and saying that they will live under a single roof, it itself is a huge deal. And talking about it, what is the superordinate principle to which those two marital partners bow? It's not, when they vow, it's not a verbal abstraction to say that they are going to speak the truth. It's the idea of behaving in reality. They have to act it out. So that's the ancient idea of word becoming the flesh. Now, two individuals who make up a married couple might well engage in a lifelong struggle concerning a single inappropriately conceptualized question that who is subordinate to whom in a marriage? After all, each might have a reason to break up because they are not compatible with the other one. And depending on the personality, it can become a zero-sum game. Someone can become tyrannical and someone can be pushed into some kind of acceptance and slavery. So that is a reality, and we cannot be blind to such a problem. And the idea of light, so we are talking about the idea of light. And according to Peterson, it's the idea that this ghostly figure, the ideal union of what is best for the both personalities, should be constantly regarded as the ruler of the marriage. Like, what is the good thing for both? And indeed, as something close to the, well, neither participant rules the other. Instead, both are subordinate to the principle of illumination. It's the idea of light. In that circumstance, it is not that one must abide by what the other wants or vice versa. Instead, it is that both should be oriented towards the most positive future possible and agreed that speaking the truth is the best way forward. The orientation and truthfulness will engender a transformative dialogue between these two partners. Voluntary subordination to this higher order principle of illumination is the meaning behind lighting this candle. And that gets the slavery out, and that brings in the compromise and negotiation. And these are the things that Peterson discusses in rule number 10.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Next up is going to be Kevin, followed by Jean, and then we're going to do breakout rooms for 20 minutes. Kevin.
Yes, thank you. Actually, in our chatting room, we already have a great couple of sea living. Brian, you see how beautiful. That's I would say. That's the picture we pursue. It's I would say life or marriage like water. You know, look at the man's romantic. It's nice, but the relationship is more important than the romance. A second point about the word of choice Peterson chose is negotiation, tyranny, and slavery. This for me a little bit. I'm not religion made that way. It's used for the relationship. Compare, let's see, just now, Victor saw the picture. Let's see, with Kindle is enlightening. What's that moment you think about? You think about those words or love or form the family, a future, have kids. That doesn't make sense for me. Also, he mentioned that strife, the default condition. It's like competition. If it's competition, why you form family? So that's also a previous speaker like you got use Maritza, I guess, stay on mirror. When you stay on mirror, think about 1 minute only. How can get work together better? Maintain the relationship. You can share the moment with both. If this new couple, let's do a weekly review. It's better than the married before. Then in 1 year, you try months review. Then slowly you get used to the dynamic of marriage. I would say the third one is to give up. You easily to like Jade said, it used to be like 50 years, no problem. You can easily give up. If you see it don't work, I'm going to give up. That's here's going to couple words could be help. Let's use a beginner mind for the relationship, then build tolerance and respect the cultural perspective, trust each other, and respect the daily contribution. If nothing works or doesn't work, you talk later. Don't talk right away. Finally, find a foundation from beginning to end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Next up is Jean. Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to share a story. It's interesting, this talking about the relationships. It seems so heavy. I don't understand, why people are so, especially the one they mentioned about the guy is dying and his wife is cutting his nail, and I was like, my God, this sounds like horror story. I cannot believe it. Anyway, I don't understand why people stay together miserably. If they are not happy, maybe it's better to be apart. I want to share a story. When I was doing the Landmark advanced training, actually the trainer said, when she joined the Landmark, she wanted to divorce her husband. So then what happened after she joined? She said, now I'm giving lectures all over the world, and my husband is taking care of my mom. And we are so great together, and we're video chatting. We just love each other. Like, so it's so funny. It seems when we have problem, I think I have this theory. If you have problem on 2-dimensional, you don't solve that problem on that level. You have to solve the problem in 3-dimensional level. So on the 3-dimensional, there's no problem anymore. So basically, I did Landmark training with my husband too. And before, we always fight for the housework. I think that's the most trivial thing and most conflict in the relationship. We fight all the time. Who cleaned the dishes, all this. But after the training, we no longer do that. The part of the reason is like, when we are so busy develop ourselves, these things become so trivial. Nobody even say, okay, if I have time, I do it. So I think if both have a goal or purpose together, then this small problem no longer exaggerate, become a big obstacle in relationship. I think it's important for the people, the couple to have a common goal. Once they have that, then all the other things no longer a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean. So folks, now we're going to go to the breakout rooms. And for breakout rooms, we've got some questions. Let me go ahead and put them in the chat. So the questions, so we're going to run the breakout rooms with these questions for 20 minutes, after which we come back to this main room and you come back with the biggest questions that you have. So you get to put one question on the table. Anybody who wants can put a question on the table. Then I'll compile all the questions and then we will go ahead and do a lightning round of quick answers to the questions. So for the breakout rooms, the questions are, what is the most important thing needed for a relationship to work? Second, how does commitment factor into relationships? What is the role of commitment in a relationship? And third, how do these elements, all the elements that Jordan Peterson talks about regarding marriage, how do they apply to other types of relationships, whether romantic or otherwise, like friendships, for example? So those are the questions. What is the most important thing for a relationship to work? What is the role of commitment? And how do the principles in this chapter apply to relationships other than romantic relationships? Okay, so each of the rooms will have moderators or facilitators. They'll be leading the discussion. We will be doing this for 20 minutes and then we'll come back here. Remember to come back with the best question you possibly can, starting the breakout rooms now. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. All right, so it's time for the lightning round. So we'll start by putting questions on the table. Put forth your best question, the best question that you have about this chapter, about the general subject of this chapter. Go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom in order to put your question on the table. We'll collect all the questions, and then we're going to go through all of them and answer them in our lightning round. So let's get started. It's going to be Joe, Kevin, and Michael. Joe, what's your question?
So I think an interesting question would be, why are people afraid to commit?
Wonderful. Why are people afraid to commit? See, I like these short, to the point questions. They're easy to think about, easy to, and they generate a lot of, like, it's like an explosion in your head. So perfect. Why are people afraid to commit? Next up is Kevin, followed by Michael. Folks, line up for questions. Go ahead, Kevin.
What do you want from your relationship?
Excellent. What do you want from your relationship? Next up is going to be Michael, followed by Rochelle, Jade, and Victor. Michael.
Should you forget love and search for betterment?
Okay, wonderful. Should you forget love for sake of betterment? Wonderful. These are great questions. Rochelle. Rochelle, you need to unmute yourself.
This sort of relates to what I was talking about during the breakup room about myself having health problems and my partner also having health problems, that we are maybe not well enough physically to really commit. You know, we have to take care of ourselves and get to the point of, you know, improving our health a lot more.
Rochelle, what question would you like to put on the table? We are just putting questions on the table right now.
Well, that is there ever a time when maybe some people cannot commit in a relationship because
Wonderful.
they
Thank you.
have health problems, each of them.
Thank
and
you.
they have to
Thank
work on
you. Are there
themselves.
situations where people cannot commit? Very good. Next up is Jade, followed by Victor. Jade.
When I walked in, you guys were talking about the difference of age. When the breakout room ended, it was ending on the point of age. So Aaliyah said, age ain't nothing but a number. So I'm kind of wondering, do people really think that's true?
Okay, is age nothing but a number? Very good. Next up is going to be Victor, followed by Jean. Victor.
What's the best thing you can offer to a relationship?
Excellent. What's the best thing offered to a relationship? Very good. Next up is going to be Jean, followed by D. Jean.
My question is the people unique enough to not be replaced in relationship, or they are so similar, that's why easily to be replaced?
Okay. Let me make sure. Can you repeat it? I want to make sure I get it.
Basically, the human, you know, like I have this theory is universal love versus because of the manufacturer factory of the chickens. Like people used to be very unique. That's why I see the historical story about this love story. Because we grew up in industrial world, like manufactured chicken, people are so similar. They're not unique anymore. So they're easily be replaced in relationship.
Okay.
That part related.
Okay, very good. So I'll just put that as an open-ended question. Are people fungible, replaceable in a relationship as opposed to being unique? Are they replaceable or unique? Very good. Next up is D. D, what's your question?
Okay, the question is, can you get beyond the romance to really commit?
Okay, can you get beyond romance to commit? Okay, beyond. Okay, very good. Jade. Okay, Jade says thanks. Okay, let's see. To commit. All right. So now we're going to go, Mike, what's your question?
I will ask a question that probably is too short.
No question is too short. Go ahead. And
This
I'm
question is
delighted.
too short. Does Peterson's concept of interpretation and misinterpretation of attachment theory, as defined by John Bowlby and modified by John Gottman, explain his entire chapter of team building for business, sports, military, and relationships?
Okay, that's too large a question to handle, Mike. But I'll put it down. It's too hard for there isn't enough context. The questions have to be such that most people have context to be able to.
Attachment theory is the context.
Okay, attachment. Okay, very good, very good. So let's talk about how does Peterson's approach here relate to attachment theory? Very good, perfect. Thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and answer the questions. The rule is that it's lightning round, so you have to be very brief, between 1 sentence to 5 sentences, maximum 30 seconds answers. First question: why are people afraid to commit? If you would like to answer it, go ahead and type exclamation mark. It's going to be Jamila followed by Sunny. Jamila.
I think that every time you focus on what you can't control, you take the power away from what you can.
Wonderful, beautifully put. Next up is Sunny, Jean, and Nasir. Sunny.
People do not commit because they're not inspired and they're not cherished.
Thank you. Jean, why are people afraid to commit?
I think people are afraid to commit because they're afraid better things will show up later.
Thank you. Nasir, why are people afraid to commit?
I think they're afraid to be seen.
Okay, thank you. Brian or Penny. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I will, if I may, I'll just preface this by saying I was a professor for about 15 years, and I noticed young people struggling with commitment. And I thought a lot about that and read a lot because I thought it was totally neglected in the curriculum. I think that people are afraid to commit because of when there are high stakes and uncertainty.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin, Mike, Joe, Donna, and Jade. Kevin.
Got two sides of answer. One is worry about losing the wealthy or emotionally. The second one is they could say look for the perfect best. Keep looking.
Thank you, Kevin. Mike, why are people afraid to commit? What is your short answer?
Short answer. The same fear generally, the acronym FEAR stands false expectations appearing real. And
thank you. Next up is Joe, Donna, Jade, Nick, and Brian. Joe.
Yeah, actually, Kevin took my answer. So it's, essentially a fear of being hurt, I think.
Thank you. Donna. Oh, audio doesn't work. Donna says they're afraid to get hurt, of losing love or rejection. Jade.
I think it's also because people aren't sure what they're committing to. There's again, that lack of structure, lack of clarity, unclear expectations. People don't know what they're attaching themselves to.
Thank you. Next up is Nick, Brian, Becky, and Becky. Nick.
I think they're either afraid of future disappointment or that they're they would meet someone else during the relationship and not be able to pursue them.
Thank you. Next up is Brian, followed by Becky. Brian.
It's just too hard.
Thank you. Next up is Becky.
With commitment, you're deciding to restrict your other options. And so there's the fear of well, what if there's something better? But you've already decided that you wouldn't pursue something.
Thank you. Next up is Nicole. Nicole, go ahead.
I agree with the uncertainty as well as rejection, disappointment as well as limitations.
Thank you. Jade.
Some people I think is perceived as fear, but some people just don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. What do people want from relationships? What do people get from relationships? Why do people pursue relationships? Go ahead and type a exclamation mark if you would like to answer. Dave, followed by D. Dave.
Someone to share the joys and sorrows.
Thank you. Next up is D, Jean, and Joe. D.
Sometimes people think that there's an advantage when they enter the relationship. So they're looking to get something out of the relationship, but it's not necessarily to the benefit of the other party.
Thank you. Jean.
Yeah, I think there's two parts. One is they want to share whatever the adventures in life, and also they want to raise a family a lot of times. And the third one, people want to feel unique. I think only in relationship they can feel their uniqueness.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Joe, Donna, Nasir, Michael, Brian, and Kevin. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, to have, shared experiences and to see someone else and to not be alone. I mean, part of it is to not be alone.
Thank you. Donna says deep connection. Nasir, why do people pursue relationships?
Connection.
Thank you. Next up is Michael.
Yes, people want a better version of themselves.
Wonderful. Brian.
The shared experience, and it increases each person's potential.
Thank you. Kevin.
Simply 1 + 1 bigger than 2. Form the family, then especially elderly as a companion, grow together.
Thank you. Next up is D, Mary, and Jamila. D.
As people, are needy, they need the support system of another individual.
Thank you. Mary.
Someone to love.
Thank you. Jamila.
I think sometimes people fall in love with the potential that they have and who they can become with that other person, and just the potential part, not the lived experience.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Jade, followed by Maria. Jade.
I suspect at present, some people just don't want to be alone during COVID.
Okay. Next up is Maria.
Body and mind and heart connection.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Next up is, should you forget romance for the sake of betterment? Maritza, you can answer this one or the previous one, whatever you want.
Well, I will answer
Or
both.
both?
Both kind of similarly. You know, for the first one, it would be to see one's values reflected in another person. Like, so the benefit of our moral self viewed in someone else. And I think in the same way, if we don't find that anyone's moral center is a vision of ours, then maybe it is safer to just keep working on oneself and maintain solitude.
Wonderful, thank you. Nobody else wants to answer the question? Brian, followed by Nasir. Brian, you can disagree with it. It should, so it's a should you. So you can say, no, you should not, or you should, or why, or in what cases. You can answer all of that. Go ahead, Brian.
I think you should reject romance if it does not include self-betterment and betterment for the other person.
Wonderful, wonderfully put. Next up is Nasir and Jean. Go ahead.
I would go for emotional integrity before sex.
Very good. So the question, Jade asked, what's the question? The question is, should you forget romance for the sake of betterment? If so, when? If not, when not? Next up is going to be Jean, Brian, and Kevin. Jean.
I think relationship is best way to be betterment, because usually you will end up with someone just opposite of you. It's your shadow, basically. So it's the best way to integrate your shadow.
Wonderful. Next up is Brian Alabi, followed by Kevin. Brian.
It depends.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin.
I think by the martial law, right? That's, you see physically basic needs, then you growing up together.
Thank you. Next up is Jade.
I'm gonna riff off of the it depends. I think it does depend, but if you're able to do whatever development you feel you need to do with someone, then why wait? But if you can't do it and you need to be in isolation, then isolation is what you need. It's like butterfly, like Mariah Carey says, let it go and it'll come back if it's supposed to be meant to be.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, next question is age nothing but a number? What's the role of age and age differences in relationships? Nasir.
Experience and wisdom.
Thank you. Jean. Jean, you need to unmute.
Sorry. I think we have different age, like our physical age, mental age, psychological age. So I think, unfortunately, most people, when they focus too much on physical, then they're stuck with that. But some people keep their psychological age young, spirit young.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Joe, Dee, Mary, and Jade, and Jamila, and Brian, and Rochelle. Joe.
I'd actually really thought about my answer, and Jing just took it. It's like there's different types of ages, mentally, physically, and yes, it matters to a point, but it depends on the context.
Everybody keeps taking your answers.
Yeah, I know. It's like everybody's in my head. It's
next
not.
Next up is Dee, Mary, and Jade. Dee.
Age does matter, because if it's too extreme on one side or the other, at one point or another, one of the individuals is going to be either left out or not feeling comfortable with the other age person. So if it's extreme, I can't see a 45-year-old with a 20-year-old, and you can't see a 90-year-old with a 60-year-old, so it's just too extreme.
Thank
So
you.
they say it works, but it doesn't.
Thank you. Next up is Mary, Jade, Jamila, and Sunny. Mary.
Yeah, it's been said already. I was going to say age doesn't matter until it does, and usually it matters more to usually the older person's going to start feeling it before the younger person.
Thank you. Next up is Jade, Jamila, and Sunny. Jade.
I don't know. I have a hard time with this one. To giving a definitive answer. I feel like this is such a subjective thing. People don't scoff when I have friends that are old enough to be my parents, whether male or female. But if I were to date someone who was old enough or marry someone old enough to be my parent, people would scoff at me. So I don't know. That didn't give you an answer, but it illustrates how, doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Next up is Jamila, Sunny, and Brian Alabi. Jamila.
I think that problems can lead to possibilities.
Thank you. Next up is Sunny, Brian, and Rochelle. Sunny.
Well, some parts of the population, like males that are older, they think they can prey on younger women and it's okay. And the younger women might fall for it because they want easy money. But I do think it's a bad idea. Look at how Demi Moore, Ashton Kutcher left her to go procreate with a younger woman. So I'm dead against those May, December things.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Brian, Rochelle, and Mike. Brian.
It only matters to those outside the relationship.
Thank you. Rochelle, do you think that age difference matters in relationships? Yes or no? Okay, next up is Mike.
Since we said this also extends to non-romantic age relationships, I think you can say that age difference has advantages and disadvantages in building a team. Tom Brady brings something to his football team. Alan Greenspan and Andrea Mitchell have had a stormy relationship. Mae West used to discard her boyfriends or husbands when they reached the age of 25.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is going to be Rochelle. Rochelle, have you unmuted?
Yeah, I did unmute. Okay, what I want to bring up is the whole idea about the sexism. Because
no, we're just talking about age difference. Okay, go ahead.
Well, age difference relates to sexism.
Sure.
That older men feel more and more the freedom to date a younger woman, but when it's the other way around, the possibilities don't seem that way. And then classism enters into it too, because when you take somebody, even though I admire her a lot, Tina Turner, she was able to have a husband 31 years her junior. So maybe women who have a lot of money can be with a much younger man, but that's a classism issue. But I know it's one person when I mentioned, but it's also that I feel that women are not, they can't be with a younger man as easily because of the sexism of the and I think that it could work out. It depends on a lot of factors.
Thank you.
Fall in love with somebody younger too. I mean,
Got it. Thank you. Next up is going to be Nick, Dave, and Nick and Dave. Nick.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of interesting because I think when you're starting out a relationship, it does matter since, especially I think when you're younger, you were 18, 19, 20, high school versus college, and right out of college, those years, people can be changing a lot. There can be very extreme differences even with similar physical ages. But the other thing that I think is interesting is even if people are similar physical or psychological age. When you get on the tail end of the spectrum, when you're very old, divergences can happen even if you are technically very close in age. And that's something where, for the betterment of the relationship, you might have to deal with someone who's like you're the same age, but physically your body is much older, and you have to care for them, where you're able to do all these things and they can't. And that's where the commitment in the relationship comes up, where you have to look past that. And I think you still have to stay together and maintain that relationship.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Dave. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, Shrikant, I think with wide age differences, it's like from two different civilizations, different music, different books you've read, but it's like, you can have a relationship with someone from another country. It's something you can overcome, but it's good that you're aware of what's going on.
Thank you. Next question is, what's the best thing you can offer in a relationship? What's the best thing you can offer in a relationship? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Okay, it's going to be Michael, followed by Nasir and Jean. Michael.
Best thing you can offer in a relationship is patience.
Thank you. Nasir, Jean, Dee, Joe, Maria, and Brian. Nasir.
I think honesty and safety, emotional safety.
Thank you. Jean.
Yeah, I think best thing you can offer is helping the other people find themselves or be better.
Thank you. Next up is Dee, Joe, Maria, Brian, and Jade. Dee.
Jean stole my answer, but offering your genuine self is the best thing that you can offer in a relationship.
Thank you. Next up is Joe.
Nobody stole my answer this time. It's so to want more for the other person than you want for yourself.
Thank you. Next up is Maria, Brian, Jade, and Kevin. Maria.
Emotional support and empowerment.
Thank you. Brian.
Is that, are we on mute?
Yeah, it's great. Go.
Oh, I was going to say just your true self.
Thank you. Next up is Jade, followed by Kevin and Sunny. Jade.
I think whatever it is that you're offering, we just need to be careful that we're offering them something that they want in a form that they are comfortable with. Like, it needs to be something they want and are comfortable with.
Wonderful.
Whatever it is.
Next up is Kevin, Sunny, and Jamila. Kevin.
Willing sacrifice.
Thank you. Sunny.
I would say cook and be orderly, carry your weight, really listen and respect their family and respect their boundaries.
Thank you. Next up, Jamila, followed by Dee. Jamila.
This is not fully formulated yet, but I think the understanding that, right, your true happiness is intrinsic and that other person is not there to provide you happiness.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Dee.
I think offering your loyalty and due respect for both parties is an important factor to the relationship.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to go to two general questions. One question is a very simple question. Breakout rooms, I keep currently at 20 minutes. Would you prefer 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or 25 minutes in the breakout rooms? You can just put numbers. You can say 15, 20, or 25. I just want to see how things are going. Mostly for this Jordan Peterson meetups. For each of them, it is different. Okay, we've got lots of 20s. Okay, very good. Okay, that was quick. Next up is, which of the rules so far is your favorite and why? So you just can name the rule. If you want to share that, just go ahead and type exclamation mark. Just name the rule and then tell why it was your favorite one. Maritza.
Number 8 of 12 rules for life. And that's because it's the one that says tell the truth or at least don't lie. And I think that's the most important thing in life.
Wonderful. Yes. So we can include all of the ones, and also the rules that we have not yet studied from this book are also included. So you got 24 choices. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you're to talk about what's your favorite rule. Michael.
My favorite rule is make your bed, because it's all about starting with yourself.
Wonderful. All right. Anybody else? Guys, go ahead. Even if it is not your absolute favorite rule, you can say, this is a rule that I really, really like. Because I've sprung this question on you. And, I can see people rummaging through 24 rules in their mind and in your books, trying to say which one is the best. Just pick something that you really, really like and have found useful in your life. And you can name it and say why. Victor, followed by Nasir. Victor.
Yeah, I should say speak the truth, or at least don't lie. And in addition, I have one more. Can I add?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I aim at something and do the best that you can. It's rule number 2, and I haven't formulated. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Next up is Nasir.
I would say progress, not perfection. And
okay, thank you. Next up is Joe.
I mean, I have to agree with tell the truth or just don't lie, but I also like set your house in perfect order as well. And I like that specifically because it really does. You focus on yourself before you go out and criticize others. And you realize what also in that chapter, what lies within you as well.
So 2 people stole your rule this time.
Exactly.
One. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Next up is Dave, followed by Kevin. Dave.
When making a big decision in a relationship or a marriage, according to the gospel, according to Dave, it takes 2 to say yes, but only 1 to say no.
Thank you. Okay, Kevin, which of the 24 rules of Jordan Peterson did you find useful, most useful, and why? Kevin.
The map of meaning, second rule, treat yourself like you are someone you are responsible for helping.
Wonderful. Next up is Brian. Brian, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself.
I like Nasir's progress, not perfection.
Wonderful.
And I would say rule 2. Imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right, folks. Anybody else wants to share? Joe.
I really did like rule 1 of this book. Don't carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement, because then again, yeah, that's teaching you to refrain from actually criticizing something until you fully understand it. And once you fully understand it, then you can actually make some meaningful changes. And I that's why I really like that particular rule. Is I feel like people often will criticize something initially without even giving it a chance or understanding it.
Wonderful. All right. So the last question I have, that this book is winding down. We got only 3 more meetups. We'll do one on the, one each on remaining 2 rules plus one on Coda. And I want to look at the next thing that we are going to do on Jordan Peterson. Can you name what do you think you would like to do? There are many things that are possibilities. I want to listen to see what, so biblical series is one. So you can go ahead and talk briefly about what do you recommend and why? Okay, Victor.
Actually, I'm just typing it out. Yeah, biblical series. I know it can become a bit narrowed, but there are so many great things to pick up from that series, and it's really deep. So I'd like to listen to that one.
Okay, we got 3 people wanting that. Kevin, what do you think?
Oh, I'm gonna unmute myself. I would say Yijing is, yeah, here, this series, it's could be how, even, I know it's a little bit hard on the beginning, but even scratch
Sure.
a little bit how.
We'll do that. But I'm mostly at this point, I'm asking mostly about Jordan Peterson meetups. In the Jordan Peterson world, what would you like to see? But Yijing is certainly on my radar screen. Once we are done with Dao De Jing, I will look into doing Yijing.
Yeah, one point is you don't believe it. Western, Eastern, doesn't matter who we speak, we are human beings. You think deeper, the similar concept and practice.
Thank you. But what I want to do, the way I structure these meetups, there are themes. So on Thursdays, the theme is Jordan Peterson. So we will take something, from Jordan Peterson to do on Thursdays. Yijing will do probably another day. Next up, Mary also recommends a biblical series. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, all right. So this is very nice. I like this format. I think the variation in the format works pretty well. I think the time, what is this? Assume, okay. Donna says number 9. There are lots of people for the biblical series. Okay, all right.
If I may,
please.
Peterson's been doing a lot of interviews, so maybe we could select one interview and discuss the interview. That's another option.
I have preference for series, because what series does is that we develop kind of common knowledge, like common base of values, instead of going for pieces which are disconnected from each other. This is building something. And I think biblical series is a good choice. That's something, it's substantial material. And we will figure out how to do that. I'll talk to Roger. He's really, really good on that series. So I'll talk to him and we'll figure out some ways of doing that. Victor, are you up for doing slides for biblical series?
Of course.
Okay.
I'm excited for it, actually.
All right. Because Victor, I want to say that your contribution here has been really, really, very valuable, because it is a different format. The visual format is very powerful, and you come at it in a very creative way. You don't just kind of mechanically summarize things, but you choose the visuals, the stories that mesh and add to whatever is being said. So I look forward to that. So I will almost certainly do the biblical series.
I'm clicking my fingers because that's a beatnik applause from the 1950s.
All right.
Great.
Wonderful. All right, folks. So thank you very much. We will see you. I also want to tell you that we are doing this incredible series on Dao De Jing. Now, Dao De Jing, if you have not heard about it, that is the foundational book of Chinese thought. And it is something which is very, very simple. It's just 81 small poems. You can listen to them in less than an hour. You can read them in less than 2 hours, I would say. But it would take a lifetime to understand them. And it's really, really fascinating. We are doing amazing stuff, amazing set of meetups, both kind of discussions. We have got lots of experts coming and talking about it. Tomorrow, we are going to do a meetup on Taoism, Dao De Jing, and self-improvement. What is the Taoist approach to self-improvement, and how is it different from most common Western approaches to that? So if you're not already participating in that, you would, I think it's going to be useful. I mean, the place where, if you want to look at the intersections, we always do kind of this syntopical thinking. The place where the intersection between Dao De Jing and Jordan Peterson's thought is the idea of order and chaos. That is directly from Dao De Jing. It is directly from Chinese thought. The edge of order and chaos, and how do you manage that? I should not say that. I should say that Chinese thought is the most sophisticated version of that. most deepest understanding of the interplay between order and chaos. There are other Western versions, but Chinese have taken it to a completely new level. And that's what you're studying when you're studying Tao Te Ching. So I invite you to join that. The next one is going to be on Friday. And then a gentleman called Franklin, who's been studying Tao Te Ching since 1970s, is going to be here on Monday to continue. We will have another one on Tuesday as well. All right, so it's a deep dive. You know, we're just trying to understand the work from many, many, many different angles. So don't miss that. All right, thank you very much, folks.